Something in the woods. Hey everyone. For a little backstory, my name is Miles, and I live in a small town in Georgia. Most of my life, I lived in a community, but recently moved to a more rural area. The house that I am in is around 45 to 50 years old and sits on a good plot of land. Anyway, let's get to the story. So, I moved in a few months ago, and nothing was out of the ordinary. I live with my mom, sister, and 3 dogs. So, when I would hear something outside or an odd noise, I would chalk it up to being just one of them. About 2 weeks after moving in is when things started happening. One night, I had just finished doing all the things I needed to do before bed and was relieved to see my comfy bed. I fell asleep like any other night, but woke up around 2 in the morning to this odd noise, like someone calling for something. I grabbed my phone, then walked over to the window. I live on the 2nd story to shine my flashlight outside. Nothing, just our yard in the woods. Then I hear it again, this time more clearer. Someone was yelling out for help. I got extremely nervous and took a step back from the window. I was about to walk to my mom's room to tell her, but I stopped myself. I waited to hear it again before going to tell her. With nothing for around 2 minutes, I went back to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I asked my mom and sister if they had heard anything. Both of them said they didn't hear anything and slept like a baby. I brushed it off as my mind played tricks on me and went to do some school and yard work. I was playing Clash of Clans on my phone when I realized I didn't hear my dogs playing or walking around. I looked up and they were staring at something in a little clearing before you hit the woods. I looked in the direction of where their heads were, and I saw an outline of a deer. The deer was on its 4 legs, but just staring at me. I told the dogs to come in, and they didn't move a muscle. I kept yelling and yelling until my mom came outside to ask me what the issue was. I told her to look in the direction of the deer, but there was nothing there. The dogs were still staring at something, so I just pulled them inside and locked the door. When I looked out the window, I saw it again, this time closer. I locked every door in the house and headed up for bed. I woke up again around 2 a.m. to someone yelling, but this time I wasn't the only one who heard it. My mother sent me a text saying, "Is that you?" To which I replied, "No." I listened very carefully to the yelling. This time it was saying, "Boone." Boone is the name of my youngest dog. Terrified, I ran to my mom's room to talk about what was going on when I froze at the door. I heard something walking outside under my window. I didn't move at all. I was thinking to myself someone was about to break in. It was probably a good time to mention my sister was at a friend's house for the night. So it was just me, my mom, and the dogs. Whatever was outside walking around didn't sound human. It sounded like a deer or a dog walking around. My dogs sleep in my mom's room, so I thought it was that weird deer I saw earlier. Then, the most terrifying thing I could think of took place. Boone. The sound of this thing was like nothing I've ever heard before. I ran to my mom's room, and she was already on the phone with the police. Stupidly, I walked to my mom's window and opened it, and screamed curse words at it. I heard fast and heavy footsteps run from my side of the house to my mom's side. I closed the window and heard this thing scratch at the walls of the 1st floor. Then police sirens filled the air, and this thing bolted into the woods. I looked out the window to see it was a deer on 2 legs. The police knocked on our door and got our statements. We walked around the house and saw footprints, scratches on the wood and windows, and even a piece of an antler. When the cops left me and my mom, we stayed up until a light broke in the sky. I am very familiar with skinwalkers, but have never thought they were real. This was only 4 days ago, and I still hear this thing at night. If anyone can help me rationalize this, you are more than welcome to reply. The woman on my street. This is 100% true story. It's gonna sound pretty insane, but I swear that everything I'm about to tell you actually happened. During the fall semester of my senior year of high school, about 14 years ago now, every night after dinner with my family, I'd walk my dog Jessie down the street to a small field near our house. 2 things you should know. 1, my house is situated on a hill, and you will have to walk over top of it and all the way down to the bottom to get to the field. Lined with trees, lots of street lamps, so it's pretty well lit, but can still seem spooky at times. 2, Jessie is one of our most well-behaved golden retrievers I've ever seen in my life. She never barks at anyone, never runs off, doesn't even chase squirrels. So normally I don't keep her on a leash when we're just walking down the street. Anyway, so I start walking her down our steps to the street, just like any other night. It's about 9:30 and the sun is long gone. We usually just walk down the middle of the road because not that many cars drive through. Jessie's not on a leash, but right by my side as we round the top of the hill to go down, when all of a sudden we see a woman walking towards us in the middle of the road. We're at the top of the hill and she's about halfway up, staggering in this weird, unnatural sort of way. She was walking almost as if she was a ghoul out of The Grudge or some horrible Silent Hill character. But when I first saw her, I wasn't really scared, just more worried that she wasn't okay. I thought maybe she had been hit by a car and one of her legs was broken, but she was moving along at a jilted but steady pace. Her long black hair and a dark dress. Her skin was pretty pale in the street lamp's light. I didn't really know what to do or make of the scene. I just kind of stopped staring at her when suddenly Jessie started running toward her, barking like crazy. I've never seen her bark like this before. I honestly feel like if someone broke into our house, she'd just go up to them, expected to be petted. But here, she was growling ferociously, almost like she was ready to strike. I chased after her, only catching up when she was right in front of the woman, basically barking in her face. The woman didn't react at all. She didn't jump, didn't put her hands out, and she just stood there, staring at my dog. I bent down, grabbing Jessie by the collar to pull her back. I was maybe 2 feet from the woman. I started apologizing profusely, but when I turned my head to look at her, I stopped. I'm crouched down looking up at her with a street lamp shining down on both of us. She slowly turns and looks down toward me without saying anything, and I immediately see it. She doesn't have a face. Not in her features were all mixed together, washed out way. She literally didn't have a face. It's complete blackness. Like looking into the sky and staring at the blackness between the 2 stars. I can see her hair, I can see her neck, but I can't see a single feature between. I'm telling you, it was absolute and utter black. A void. I looked into it, stopped dead mid-apology, as she looks down back at me without a word. After a few seconds of us just staring at each other in silence, she turns away and looks back forward, commencing to walk again. I let go of my dog's collar, more in surprise than anything, and immediately Jessie runs away to the other side of the street. Chasing after her, I catch up and grab her collar again on the sidewalk now. It couldn't have been more than 3 to 5 seconds. But holding my dog again, I turned to look back at the woman and she disappeared. At the rate she was walking, it should have taken her at least 30 seconds to get to the top of the hill. But there was nothing. She completely vanished. At the time, this was weirdly the most unsettling part of me. What the hell just happened? Did it even happen? My dog had reacted to her too, so I wasn't the only one who saw it. Slowly, I took Jessie the rest of the way down. The whole time I kept looking over my shoulder, deeply afraid that something was gonna sneak up on me. All night, I became more and more bothered by what had happened, trying to rationalize it away. Maybe the way her hair fell blocked the light, but I would have seen something. Part of her mouth, but there was nothing. Literally nothing. I'm not religious, and the logical part of me doesn't believe in ghosts. If there's no heaven or hell, how do you explain this kind of afterlife, where we still keep our bodies, our minds? I don't even know. I still don't quite believe in spirits, but I genuinely can't explain what happened that night. I've had some lesser encounters with weird phenomena, but this is the only time I've been within an arm's reach of a ghost, actually staring one in the face as it looked back at me. Something used to stalk my brother. When I was in 8th grade back in 2015, I lived at Fort Carson, a military post in Colorado. The house we lived in was pretty normal for military housing. Nothing really felt strange or creepy about the house itself. It was your regular 4-bedroom home in a small neighborhood of identical houses. I'd already lived there for a few years and had nothing out of the ordinary happen. And my family, if they did experience anything, never told me except my younger brother. My brother is the youngest out of me and my siblings, and was only 4 at the time, so whenever he would talk about things that scared him at night, a lot of the time, I just assumed it was his imagination. A year before we moved out of the house, my brother would often wake up in the middle of the night and scream and cry as if he was being hurt. First time it ever happened, the whole house ran to his room to see what was wrong, but he was just in his bed pointing at the door screaming. He said that he saw a monster in the doorway. At first, we all thought he had a bad dream or had an active imagination. However, almost every week after that, at least once or twice, he would wake up and do the same thing. I always had a huge interest in things that are paranormal or strange, so after a while, I became curious to see if he really was seeing something. One night in the middle of the summer, while I was playing Battlefield 4 with some friends, I got up and went downstairs for a snack run. When I returned to my bedroom, I thought about what my brother would say about his doorway. Me and my siblings had our bedrooms on the 2nd story of the house. My mom was directly across from the stairs, and to my left of my door was a long hallway with a bedroom between mine and my sister's room. Then my brother's room at the end. Before I sat back down to continue playing, I decided to check on him and look down the hall to his room. Standing in his doorway was a tall figure that almost didn't fit in the doorway. The top of its spine was pushed against the top, and I could only see the bottom half of its head. It had pale skin and backwards legs like a goat, except they were human legs. It was facing the inside of my brother's room towards his bed. I stared for a few seconds before I went back into my room and shut the door. What I saw shook me up a bit, but I reassured myself that I was probably seeing things, as all day I had been watching ghost videos and listening to creepypastas, so I decided to take another look. I wish I hadn't. This time, the thing was facing down the hallway, staring right back at me. Its face had almost no features except for dark holes for eyes, and its arms hung almost all the way to the floor. I froze and immediately felt sick, and after what felt like an eternity, I pulled my head down back into my bedroom and shut and locked the door. My brother didn't wake up that night, and he later would be afraid of my room too, even during the day. I never left my room at night until we moved out of the house, and I didn't tell anyone about it for a few years. I still think about it from time to time, but often doubt if I really saw what I had seen. Any of you have any similar encounters?